See what they're doing here? See what that is? They're force feeding. So they're taking a brass tube and they're jamming it down their throat, and then they're pouring some kind of gruel down there. Now that might kill them. And you can see the blood running down. You can imagine what that would do. Oh, they're not really trying to save his life. They're telling everybody else, you don't eat, we do this to you. And so they're trying to convince them to keep eating. And so that's what it is. It's all a matter of torture and terror. That's what slavery, that's what the whole system was. And they would have small cannons called blunderbusses set up, basically filled up with rocks and nails and things like that. So if they did start to rebel, they just fired into them. And it perhaps wouldn't kill them, so they could still sell them and make money. And you can see the people packed into them about them. This is a pretty scary picture. And don't forget, they're all naked and uncomfortable and miserable. They would dump them overboard. They say the sharks would just follow these ships across, because they don't move that fast. And here, 2 shots. First off, she was clearly considered too ill, so they're just throwing her over. And they're whipping somebody who tries to save her. We don't know the relationship. I don't think it matters. I'm sorry, I don't point out. I meant to point out. Here, they're just throwing her overboard. Here, they're just throwing people overboard. So either 2 things happen. They didn't calculate the food correctly, so they're just getting rid of people they figure are too weak. Or after the Royal Navy started stopping ships, if they saw a Union Jack, so that flag right there in the middle, that Union Jack, the British flag, if they saw that, they would just start dumping everybody overboard, rather than get caught kidnapping people. So I want to make sure you have no illusions how horrific the slave trade was. And those who survived, when they got there, they're going to be covered with marks from the whipping, from the chains. The chains got to be very tight. So the chains just leave these horrific wounds. They cover them with lard, animal fat, all over. It would hide the wounds on them. It would hide their scars. And so they would look healthy. And they'd be taken to the nearest market. Here, that's Charlestown, South Carolina. So that's before the Revolutionary War. A cargo, they always say prime healthy, and Spanish bastardization of Spanish and black. And here, poking and prodding, they would be naked, but not for this picture. Checking to see if they stand straight, they check their teeth. They'd be made to dance, move around, the idea being they're healthy, especially after the long trip. And this market was just one of absolute misery. Because of course, they're going to break up families and break up people and sell them. These are people who care only about wealth and greed. Here's another shot. This one is right near Savannah at Fort Augusta, Savannah, Georgia. So I want to give you an idea how horrific the Middle Passage was. And I gave you the brief example. We can use our imaginations of what's significantly worse than what I'm telling you. And in 1808, that's why when the United States banned the slave trade, remember Jefferson's first idea of diffusion, kind of slowly limit the slaves? America's not part of this. We're better than this. See? Oh, sure, we were once before, but now we've learned. But this is the amazing thing. So this is the thousands of people per year brought in. Here's where the United States banned the slave trade. And look how many are still being brought into the United States. What they would do is smuggle, or they could still bring in people who were enslaved in Cuba, for example, then brought up to the United States. So they could say, they're not coming from Africa. So what they would do is give them all fake names. And then they would go make a fake register of everybody, and then say, well, they're from Cuba, and they still speak African, because different African languages, because that's what they learned on the sugar plantations. And so they can act like they're not real. So they really didn't cut this off until the late 1840s, which is actually kind of remarkable. So that's a transatlantic slave trade. And the big thing is, most people thought slavery was going to go away. It's declining. This pernicious institution would go. Remember the slave trade? The slave trade compromise in 20 more years. The thought was really that it's just going to be gone in 20 years. And then that Industrial Revolution. Demand for cotton skyrocketed. What did Eli Whitney probably steal? Which invention that would allow for more sale of, or easier production of cotton? Yeah, the cotton gin. And that cotton gin would revolutionize cotton production. So before, tiny little seed, had to break it off, get a little short fiber cotton, little fluff about that big. It would take hours to go through that. It was slow work. It ripped their hands apart doing it. The seeds are really sharp. This would do the work for them. This is the small version. You drop the cotton in here. This roller has bristles on it, and the bristles would rip the seeds apart. And then the seeds would kind of break off, and then these brushes right here would be turning at the same time, and that would separate the seeds from the cotton. The cotton fluff would be on top, the seeds would drop to the bottom, do the work of 10, then 20 people. This is kind of remarkable, and this ties right in with the Industrial Revolution. So, after 1790, it's just beginning in Britain, about 334,000 bales of cotton. Look, by 1860, over 4.8 million bales of cotton. And this means more land under cultivation and therefore greater demand for slaves. It takes fewer slaves so they can get more money per worker. I introduced this term once before, more productivity. Productivity is everything, more per unit. And Eli Whitney would make it to meet that demand. That is the patent for his cotton gin, which he certainly stole. When he's from Massachusetts, but he went down to South Carolina and he was studying this problem and learned from slaves in South Carolina who were kind of jerry-rigging this. And I'll explain why they had to do it to get more production of cotton. And so the demand for slaves skyrocketed. So just as they're getting rid of the slave trade, demand went up. By the way, what happens to the price for humans? Now, if you're not bringing in as many people and demand goes up, prices skyrocket. So there's going to be a lot of people's wealth wrapped up in human beings. And if all of a sudden you say, oh, wait a minute, they are human beings, they should be free, where's their wealth go? And for that matter, thank you, good sound effect, but you're exactly right. And you think about it for a second. Farmers don't have a lot of money, they have wealth. And you get rid of that. Where's your collateral for your debt go? It gets big. So, here's a couple pictures of the cotton gin, and I really like, the one on the left is actually from a textbook, and look at the cheerful slave. Yay! And this is going to be part of the mythology of slavery, that slaves actually like slavery. I really like this one. Here, this was done 60 years after the fact, they're going through the cotton, and then look at the slaves dumping the cotton in. Look how happy they are. Yay, we're slaves. Slaves liking slavery will be part of the mythology of the South. They were perfectly happy until a bunch of agitators came in and convinced them they want to be free. Everybody knew slavery was bad. Here's another picture. Look how happy they are. Slaves just working. So let's get to a little bit of the culture and the economy of the South. And I can't help it. I think in terms of economics, dictating culture and politics, which seems to always kind of come true. But this is another one of those mythological, Southern mythological ideas of the South. Slaves just having fun. They're not really work that hard. They can sit and play and dance. That is a banjo. That is an African instrument. And it's kind of weird to think about the way banjos have come now into the United States. Most people probably wouldn't think of it that way, but it is. And here's the thing. King Cotton would dominate the sale of cotton. So it's not just where the money is cotton. It's not just those at the top of the cultural, social scale, the political scale. It's the political leaders. And the best area was called the Black Belt. The Black Belt, think about rich, dark, black soil. Really, really full of nutrients, great for growing products. And the Black Belt went right here. And that would also be the area of the biggest cotton production and therefore the most plantations, the most enslaved people. In fact, today, if you look at a map of counties voting in the United States, even though the South now is very Republican, there's still kind of this line there that's a little bit different. It's interesting how history and economics fit together. And so here are the main crops, cash crops. There's a few other things, like they would get a little bit of sugar here. This is long, Sea Island or long fiber cotton. The cotton just kind of hangs down these long strands, so you can just kind of pick them like this. but there's not very much. It's only right here. Short fiber. That's growth molasses. Remember, that's black belt. Tobacco. Cotton doesn't grow here very well. Tobacco doesn't grow here very well. Corn. To feed, to sell to the plantation owners in the south and the north for tobacco or cotton. But remember that. Everyone see where the yellow is? Do you see where the black belt is? Everyone got those states? The next picture. This is by percentage of enslaved people. Remember, they did a census. How much slaves were counted towards how much of your population? Remember, 3/5. So that's all your hands. Very good. Remember the black belt? Remember the yellow? Look at the numbers. The blue is the percentage of slaves. Green, free people. Free whites. Red, free blacks. Because now, because of slavery and Bacon's Rebellion, they're dividing everything by color of skin. Even though in reality, it's wealth that matters. Higher percentage. Virginia still has a lot for the legacy of tobacco cultivation. That's the black belt. Blue, the greater percentage of slaves. You don't need to know anything else. Just look at that map and tell me which state seceded first. Which state seceded first from the Union to start the Civil War? Even if you knew nothing else about the politicians there, that's all you need to know, right? What state seceded second? Yep. And these all kind of came together. And then there'd be the first wave of secession, and Texas was so brand new and so volatile, they left right away too. This group would come in the second wave of secession. The first wave, the greater percentage of slaves. And so, why is it? There's more political power with the slaveholders. I don't know why I put it that way. I don't know why I didn't put down the slaveholders have more political power. For some reason, I put more political power here with slaveholders. Yeah, just go on. The slaveholders have more political power. Wherever there's more slaves. They're the ones who have the most to lose. They're the ones, if you restrict slavery, they could see either one of two things. Them losing their wealth, or what is the greatest fear of slave owners? The rebellion will take place there. That's part of the reason why Denmark Vesey, which there might not even have been any idea of a rebellion. That could have been purely made up, but why South Carolina freaked out. And then why everybody freaked out in the South for Nat Turner. Nat Turner, they just totally lost their mind. Totally lost their mind about what happened because of Nat Turner. And so, that's all you need to know. It's where they have this wealth. And they could lose so much. And don't forget, farmers, well, all businesses are always this way, but farmers especially are always in debt. And their collateral for these big plantation owners are humans. And if they lose that collateral, they gotta come up today, this moment, with the money to pay back that debt. It's called a margin call. And they gotta do it now if your collateral disappears. It's more than just losing the labor. It's more than even class structure. It's the wealth, and their entire system that they remain in power would go away. So, another couple things about the South and their culture. There's no industry in the South, basically. That's an ironworks in Richmond, Virginia. But the money that would normally go for capital, remember the land, the machines, everything else, it's all being pumped into slaves and land. It's pumped into that. So there's no additional money. And there's no interest by the people who are the big plantation owners. They don't want the competition. They're doing perfectly fine. And so that's why they're anti-tariff. There's no industry to protect. Now, I know Calhoun wanted to unify the South to protect slavery by going against the tariff. But still, he thought he would get support, not just for his goal, but there's no industry to protect. Tariffs raise all prices. And then, that's why they're anti-internal improvements. That's why they're against helping for the railroads. or roads or canals. To this day, the South is anti-infrastructure. And since today the Republican Party is very much a Southern party, it's anti-infrastructure. Using taxpayer money for roads, bridges like that. Because it required taxes. But to their point of view, could they tax slaves? And so, no taxes. Therefore, we won't be taxing slaves. Today, it's no taxes because we might tax wealth. So, but cotton was big business. Nearly 60% of all exports in the United States were cotton. That's why they thought they would win. What country is taking the big bulk of these cotton exports? Which country has the most textile mills in the world? Still. And they thought Britain, with their powerful navy, would join in because they need cotton. Just like when the United States got French help in the Revolutionary War, that's how the United States was able to win. That's why the South thought they could win. And this is kind of remarkable. Now, the South is going to plead poverty, but it's doing quite well. And so all through this era, production kept going up and up and up. Here's the very generic, the cheap graph. Here's price. Or I mean, percentage of U.S. exports and total production. But there's an issue about production. Production goes up, something gradual is going to happen. Gradually. The supply of cotton will go up. Makes sense? Supply will go up. Supply is going to go up. Everyone's demanding cotton. We're going to grow more cotton. Eventually, if the supply keeps going up, what's going to happen to the price? The price begins to drop. So this is a graph showing the dollar price of cotton bales. And if you look at this, prices are very volatile for one commodity. Overall price is different, but one commodity. So it kind of goes up and down. So this is a trend line of the average. And you see how the price is gradually dropping. Okay, what's happened to the price of land? It's going up. What's happened to the price of slaves? It's going up. So they see this trend. They're making money. They have wealth. But they look to the future and it's scary. Just at a time when there are free soil movements going in the north. Free soil, remember the Free Soil Party in 1848. And soon there will be a free soil political party called, one of the two main parties, called the Republicans. It's coming. And so they're making money, but there's insecurity. And so what might happen if, all kinds of stuff. What if we get an abolitionist president or a free soil president? What if they start restricting slavery? What if they start taxing it? What if there's another panic? They have all these insecurities and prices are dropping. So I want to make the point. It's not that they're doing bad today, but they feel like they're not doing quite as well. And tomorrow could be worse. So much insecurity about the future is that you don't know what's going to happen, but you can sense things are a little bit worse now. You can sense things are a little bit worse. And we see that today. In the United States, wages are stagnant. Wages are very stagnant. It's kind of worldwide. And so even though people aren't necessarily doing that bad, and there's really low unemployment, there's a feeling that we're not keeping up. And just wait till when prices go up dramatically in a month and a half, how people are going to feel. So they look at the North and they see something different. Now we're still taking the point of view of the South, but there's all this industry in the North. All this industry in the North, it's booming. This is the value of produced goods in the North compared to the South in 1860. $1.5 billion compared to 155 million. Just, there's no industry. There's 1.3 million factory workers in the North by 1860, 110,000 in the South. Slaves, I'll tell you why next Monday, but they're terrible for factories. And you go on and on, more population, more farm, more everything in the North. Now, that doesn't mean wealth, but there's also the banking industry. The population's in the North. There's a sense that there's growing wealth in the North. And there is. Long-term wealth. Production and finance leads to more wealth in agriculture, everywhere. But there's still a lot of wealth in the South, but they feel behind. And this is the key element. They feel, and they already are by population, like a minority section. And so at any moment, the majority section might squeeze them. And this affects their culture. Because if you feel you might be squeezed by the majority section, you become very insular. You know what insular means? You ever heard that term? Like you're an island. Insular means island. And you're surrounded by potential enemies. Like you're in the Colosseum and you're surrounded by sharks. I was just heard about Gladiator 2. And it made me laugh. Has anyone seen Gladiator 2? I guess they have sharks in the Colosseum. It's like Sharknado. It's really cool. So, back to the culture of the South. As they see it, this north, urban, wealthy South, and they are rural. And they feel like they are just poor farmers. Yet, you notice I've put a couple pictures of plantations. Not everyone. The majority are, but there's great wealth. This is a 18th century, Virginia plantation, and that's a stylized kind of Monticello. Remember Monticello or Monticello, where Jefferson lived? And they would say, we're poor, we have nothing, we're just farmers. And the North are a bunch of bullies. And so there's going to be a myth of Southern poverty. Yeah, where was the wealth in the United States? Per capita means average. And this is the average per capita wealth. They take the approximate wealth in each state and look at the highest in each, highest per capita, average wealth per person. Mississippi, Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama. Okay, Connecticut, Connecticut's still probably the richest state. Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, you get the point? It's plantation owners. They have the wealth. Montana's not the richest state. So, that blow your mind?
What's the richest state?
Connecticut, per person, yeah. Oh yeah. Connecticut, where very wealthy people from New York City live. Yeah. Connecticut is. Montana is the most expensive place to live in the United States. Because our real estate values are so high because of out-of-state people are pushing up prices, yet our wages are low. So Montana's the most expensive place in the United States to live. Hey, we're number one. Sorry, one, I put 11. Yeah, it used to not be like that. So, the wealth was in the South. The big slave owners have the wealth. You know how that works when I hit this? I have no idea why I keep breaking mice. I know. Thank you for caring. I'm sad. I'm sorry I wanted to put you in the stocks. I'm sorry I wanted to put you in the stocks. Since you agreed with me. I still want to put you in the stocks. Okay, so the South has a very stratified class system. Very, very stratified. Very stratified. No mobility. It was very difficult to get from class to class. Okay, it was hard to move up from middle class to upper class or working class to middle class to the north, but much more difficult in the South. Is it easy to move classes today in the United States? Almost impossible. We're very stratified. Europe is much easier to get, which is kind of weird because it used to be so much more difficult. But, and that means moving up or moving down. We kind of got both ways. But wealth equals slaves. And so those who had slaves were on top of the social, economic, and political ladder. So this shows the kind of 8% of slave owners on top. But it really wasn't a triangle. Yeah, there were significantly more people at the bottom, but the triangle looked more like this. kind of, and then right to the tip top, the very tiny top. Like many societies now. And so, poor whites didn't have much in the South. Poor whites. And free blacks, but remember, they're dividing everybody by color of skin. You can look, the white here, these are total white families. And then black were the total families who had any number of slaves. And then look at the slaveholders. Most slaveholders had 1 to 9, but the vast majority of enslaved people were owned by 0.1%. Had the big plantations, and they were the political leaders. I mean, you look at all the representatives, all the members of the Senate, all the governors, they're the big slaveholders. They ran, and the vast majority of people. And so poor whites don't have much, but what do they have? They have the status of being white. And that's what held these cultures together. So the big plantation owners can say, when they talk about free soil, they're coming to take away what you have. When they talk about abolition, they're coming to take away what you have. When they talk about tariffs, they want to take away what you have. Or anything it might be. They're coming to take away what little you have. Is that effective? You don't have much. And so the plantation owners could say, we're all in this together. They're all coming to take away our stuff. We're all the same. I'm going to go back to my manager. And that's a key element here. And so the vast majority of people who would fight and die for the Confederacy did not have or would ever have had slaves in the system. But they wanted that status. Status is important. And so, what was chattel slavery? Chattel slavery, this isn't chattel slavery, it was literally owned by somebody. Okay, last thing. Chattel slavery, when was it? Is everyone excited for Thanksgiving? Aren't you sad you're not going to see me for 5 full days? You're not going to see, I'm leaving, I'm going to God's country, Eastern Montana. I am excited to see my parents, I'm not lying. Yeah.
Bring the flamingo with you so that we can all help out Venus and knowing it's Flamingo Friday.
Can't do it! The earth will tip on this axis. Chaos. I did. I changed it.
Okay, I know I saw
I was going through.
15 hours.
I had the list out here and I was going like this.
No, I saw that. I was like,
So,
oh,
I changed it to 1. Actually, you got a 46. I just totally missed it. No. Anything
on
else?
the 8.1.
You're still going to ask. What did I say?
On the 8.1 quiz, they said I got a 6 out of 8 on it, but I feel like I haven't done that on November
It's a feeling?
Yeah, I don't think
It's a feeling. Is that how you do it? I feel like I will check. I very well did.
I feel like it might have 9
Maybe I got tired of beginning.
He was getting, I was standing there waiting for my numbers and looking nice.
Do you want me to give you? Got it. You got it. You know what I did? You got it. But thank you for saying that. Your feelings were correct. So I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. We'll talk. Everyone have a good Thanksgiving. No, I'm sorry, man. I just missed time. I'm glad you said something.
Did you? Are you still playing it?